Welcome to Innovation at the Edge, a podcast dedicated to bold ideas that will build a more sustainable and resilient world. We interview global thought leaders and discuss what's new in innovation, and share insights for both entrepreneurs and corporations to build more agile and resilient businesses. Tomorrow's low-carbon and all-electric world will be created by both disruptive entrepreneurs and large corporations, and this podcast provides advice to both on how to scale their ideas.
And very often, the business model that companies tend to adopt is the wrong one. So there is the right technology, there is the right business, there is the right customer need, but the business model that links these two things together is a real key, and it's the one that is very difficult to find more than anything else.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emmanuel, Chief Innovation Officer at Schneider Electric, and I have the great pleasure to have with us today Francesco Venturini. He is the CEO of Enel X, one of the most innovative companies in energy these days. You will hear about who Francesco is and what they do exactly at Enel X in a minute. Francesco, welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Sometimes you and I joke that we actually have the same job, you at Enel X and me at Schneider Electric. And it is not always an easy job, a lot of fun, right?
But a lot of fun.
Creating new businesses, which sometimes are there to disrupt the old businesses and definitely are different. It's definitely not easy. For those who are not completely familiar with Enel is probably one of the most innovative companies in the energy world today. And of course, Enel X is the main engine of that innovation. Many utilities and companies from other industries are just trying to replicate and copy what Enel has started and trying to replicate the formula of Enel X in Europe, in the US, and in many parts of the world. So it's what you guys are doing is becoming a bit of a template for many companies in this energy transition. So back to the innovation. Anything you're especially excited about these days? Any project or any technology or business model innovation that Enel X is working on and you can share where you see a lot of potential?
I think that you touched two very important points in your question. You talked about technology on one side, and then you asked about business models on the other. I think that out there is tons of technology. Maybe sometimes I think there is too much technology, and this is a waste of resources and a waste of time, especially for the people who need to adopt it. So artificial intelligence, IoT, robotics, automation, you name it, there's tons of stuff. The real problem is how do you use this technology in a value accretive way, accretive for your customers and obviously accretive for your company. As we know, in the market, there is always demand and offer on the other side. I think that demand responds very easily to satisfying customer needs. If you have something that really can satisfy the customer needs, then the product is very likely to have success. On the other side, in terms of offering, there's tons of technologies. But these two things, so offering and demand, are tied by or are linked by the right business model. So the real problem is how do you do the matching between all the technologies out there and the customer need. But that matching is not supposed to be, at least in my opinion, one-to-one. It's not because you found a perfect machine to solve that particular customer need that product will have success. You need to be able to offer it, to market it in the proper way. And very often, the business model that companies tend to adopt is the wrong one. So there is the right technology, there is the right business, there is the right customer need, but the business model that links these two things together is a real key, and it's the one that is very difficult to find more than anything else. I believe that sometimes, very often, a lot of companies, especially in the energy space, also because we do not have that retail/customer-centric culture, because we are energy companies. At the end, we sell a commodity and people need that commodity. So it's a strange kind of product in a very regulated market. So we are missing that in our DNA. But generally speaking, my focus when I look at Enel X is how are we going to go to market? What is the business model we're going to adopt? Why will we be winning customers against the competition? Because, as Enel X, we don't really make many products ourselves. We traditionally, coming from stemming out of a utility, we are very good system integrators. So we take different pieces, we put them together, and then we need to be able to go out and conquer the market.
Any new project you're working on, or you're about to launch now at Enel X, or you have launched recently?
Well, I'll give you a few examples. I mean, more than any, first of all, probably what I should do is give a short description of what Enel X is and what it does. Enel X is a company that is actually a company at the same time is a business division within Enel's portfolio. And it's a strange division, meaning Enel has generation, distribution, retail of the commodity. So we are organized in 6 global business lines. 3 are customer segments. So we took everything that we had, we selected what we really believed in, and we allocated in 3 different boxes: B2B, B2C, B2G. And the 3 verticals are e-mobility, financial services, and ultra broadband, fiber optics, following the wholesale model. So the 3 different segments are based on one core product. And from that core product, we started journeying. We are trying to build a customer journey, starting from that core product, that then develops an environment, an ecosystem around it. 3 years ago, we started to invest heavily in e-mobility. Our objective is to electrify transport. So that's why we needed a vertical. We needed a vertical because we wanted to make sure that we had the right hardware out there. And if there was not right hardware, we were going to make our own hardware, because we believe in the fact that the hardware needs to be connected, and it needs to be we need the right software, because with the right hardware and the right software, then we can exploit in the future those big batteries on 4 wheels that are circulating on our streets. So big focus on e-mobility, financial services, because we have 75 million meters out there. So we are using our electric bill to sell insurances, to provide financial services already to our customers around the world. With 75 million meters, you need to realize that we are providing energy to almost 500 million people every day. So there is this humongous portfolio of customers that are buying already financial services from us in many countries around the world, and we decided to leverage on this. And then finally, ultra broadband. That's a different adventure. But to make a long story short, everything is originating from the fact that we're very good at pulling wires. Yeah, there are electric wires, but then it's not exactly fiber optic. But then at the same time, we're talking about, again, being able to pull in wires in the right way. Now, going back to your questions, am I particularly excited about something new? I'm particularly excited about a couple of things. Number one, the big cultural change that we need to make in this company to be cost competitive around the world. We are competing with the traditional side of the business in everything that we do, and I just described, but we're also competing with the big tech giants that, especially in the B2C segment, but not only, are the ones that, especially in this very strange COVID-19 period, are dominating the market. So the big thing that I'm excited about is the fact that we're trying completely to change the culture in Enel X and trying to platformize our business. If you want to be cost competitive, you need to build an operational platform that allows you to, especially in our case, that need to be competitive in the retail side of the market, which is not regulated, and we are competing against everybody. We need to be cost competitive. Number two, I'm very excited about different things that we are doing around the world, but e-mobility is usually the one that is more fascinating for everyone. And the concept of flexibility is always in my mind, and I believe that electric systems in the future will need more and more sources of flexibility to deal with renewables. So all the developments that we're making in terms of vehicle-to-grid integration are astonishing, and astonishing in the way they are providing new services. But from there, from trying to understand how you integrate a vehicle into the grid, in all the studies that we're doing on the technology side, then we're starting to discover so many things on the customer side. So, how people are using in a completely different way our public charging points or private charging points, how the concept of charging is completely changing their habits in the way they use their vehicles. And from here, so the combination of the technology and the combination of what the customer needs are, here we see a lot of new services and new concepts coming out. The fact that you need at least 20 minutes sitting in a car to have it fully recharged, those 20 minutes are important. Now you can spend those 20 minutes playing with your phone, playing with the dashboard in your car, or doing something else. And I think that something else is going to be somehow relevant, especially in the world that we're in. And we are working on it. And I think that you will see different things coming up in the next 6-9 months.
Amazing. So, and what you see is that, and this is probably one of the reasons why Enel is ahead of many other companies, you have understood that this new decarbonized electric world will require a lot of digital technologies, right? So this is why probably you have your platform strategy here. In this very strange year we are going through with the COVID and the crisis, in that energy transition, have you seen changes, things that have accelerated? For instance, I would assume that your flexibility business must be doing relatively well these days. But also, as you said, you see big tech companies starting to look at energy as we don't know exactly what yet, but as probably a market they would want to play at some time. So to play in at some time. Any specific change or any comment on this very strange year we are going through?
Well, obviously I have several comments regarding the strange year in general, but when we focus on the business, I have to say probably two things that are relevant, at least to me. Number one, when I look at end of the year results, because of the fact that Enel X, which is a very small baby, we were born just 3 years ago. So we are making our first steps into the digital technology. But the fact that we focus so much on digital has been enough to secure our results for the end of the year. Actually, Enel X is probably going to close 2020 with results that are much better than budget, which, if you compare it to the traditional business and the impact that COVID had, especially on the industrial sector, it's pretty amazing. Probably COVID didn't do anything else other than accelerating this transition. I think that very often we talk too much about energy transition. We tend to forget about the digital transition, which is instead, as we know, fundamental in our lives. And I'm happy that Schneider is essentially taking the same path and having a very strong strategy in that field too. So that's one. So I think I see a very strong acceleration, and thankfully this is improving our results in 2020. And at the same time, I believe that the energy transition instead is a great opportunity to do what's needed the most right now, which is to reignite the economies around the world. These past 9 months have been a disaster for most of the economies, especially Europe. They've been hit very hard. If you are in the digital world, there is a great opportunity. If you are in the energy transition world, there is a good opportunity too. Enel X is lucky enough to be in both. We'll try to definitely leverage on it in the next months.
You will try to leverage that energy transition and that acceleration of the energy transition. But many other companies, we see a lot of oil and gas players now who basically want to become greener and want to invest in renewables. And they are, sometimes when you observe them, they are doing what you did like 10 or 12 years ago, right? Someone could do this. So do you think they are going to be a relevant player in the energy transition, this electrification of the world and greenification, or not? Or do you see them as future competitors, for instance?
Well, it depends what you mean with future competitors. If we're talking about electrifying the world, I just had a a couple of hours presentation with the guys at Bloomberg, New Energy Finance. And we were looking at their forecast for the next 20 years and how they see things changing. They essentially have two scenarios. What they call the base scenario, I would say the plausible one, the one that they really believe in. And they're essentially saying, look, I mean, renewables are going to grow exponentially in the next years, but it's not going to be enough to electrify the world. And then there is another one, which for them was, the impossible one, but the one that we should aim at if we really want to have an effect on climate in this world. And in that case, I mean, you would need trillions and trillions of euros or dollars of investments in the next 10 years. And probably there is not even enough equipment and human resources to follow that path. Why I'm saying this? Because I think that if you look at the energy space, if you really need to electrify the world, there is enough room for everybody. And honestly, I mean, it's still such a regulated segment that if people are following the rules, I don't see any reason to worry about the fact that there are going to be new entrants in that space. So if we focus on that, there is room for everybody. Completely different is if we try to replicate the utility model, and if we are trying to get into the new services. If you want to be a utility, by the way, you need to distribute the energy, so you need a grid. It's very difficult for an oil and gas to convert unless they start buying grids around the world. But in that case, I mean, it wouldn't be really competing; it would be just going out and do what utilities have done for centuries. Almost 2 centuries. Yeah, I see so many oil and gas companies today just focusing on renewables. Yes, tons of room, but not enough. So either they go out and they go shopping around and buy utilities, or it's gonna be difficult for them to really grow in this space. But when you're going into services, I mean, I go back to what I was saying before. Either you have let's call it a valuable, real business model. Or, honestly speaking, I think that they are going to just replicate the same mistakes that we made in the past, that a lot of utilities made in the past. I'll give an example. I see so many oil and gas companies just buying companies that startups or even mature companies making charging stations and then installing those charging stations at gas stations. And with that, fighting or wanting to participate into the new world of electrified transport. I mean, personally, I don't believe that. Applying all business models to the world that is changing, I don't think that is going to be successful. So you need to realize that the people are not going to charge the car sitting at a gas station without a bathroom and without something else to do. I mean, that's just not going to happen. I mean, yeah, maybe it's going to happen at the beginning, but I mean, they will look for places that can serve something at the same time while they're charging their car. So I'm not really concerned about those players in particular. I'm much more concerned about those players that can adapt fast, experiment, and try to sort out what the best solution is and inject the level of digitalization that is needed to create that customer experience that customers want now, because they are so much used to the Netflix, the Amazon, and so on, that they want it to be replicated in every aspect of their life.
Any startup or company you would highlight one of the startups you are working with, because you're working with many startups with your lab, that you think can really bring that new value or can bring these new services?
Well, to name a startup here would be like committing suicide. I mean, the day after, probably I would have tons of sharks going around it, trying to figure out what to do with it. We are not a company that injects any equity in startups. Either we buy them because we think that they need to be integrated as business model in what we do, or usually we go with commercial agreements. We want them to grow their product. But to integrate it in our offering more than anything else. I think that what Enel has learned in the past 15 years was that injecting equity and then having to deal with the startups was not our job. I mean, it was not in our DNA. We're not a venture capital firm, and we don't know how to do it. So we failed a lot, too much. And it was a humongous waste of resources, not just financial, but also in terms of having to manage these companies that have a completely different mindset from the one we have. So we're not doing that anymore. We are scouting for startups all over the world. The objective is try to understand what's going on in those ecosystems and trying to figure out something that makes sense related to what's needed. But it's very important that they focus on the business that we're in. Again, as usual, I mean, there's tons of stuff going out there, tons of new techs. You need to make sure that it's something that can fit in your business model. So we are very open, very much monitoring everything that makes sense. And if we find something that makes sense, it cannot be too early stage. We want a product, a service, something that we can test and we can buy. And then, if it's appropriate, a strong commercial agreement, and we try to leverage on the big customer base that Enel has and make sure that it's successful. Sometimes we have success in doing this, and sometimes we don't. But at least we know where we fail. We try not to replicate the mistake over and over again in the future.
And then generally, I would say, and if you look at the results, you're generally successful, right? So you may fail a few times, like all of us, but you're generally basically creating the future of energy, and with Enel X and all the initiatives you've launched.
We are open, as you are open, to any kind of initiative if it's value creative either for the customer or for our companies. And I think that's the right attitude. And that's the big commonality that Schneider and Enel have together.
Yeah, I agree. I fully agree. And your point, I also like a lot your point on it isn't applying only a new technology without applying the right business model to it. And your example of how the oil and gas companies are looking at EV charging is a good example. You have to have the right business model for the right technology, and of course, responding to a customer need. But sometimes people just forget things which sound like common sense, but you just have to apply them and apply them successfully, as you usually do. Francesco, any last word of conclusion before we leave?
Not really. I mean, I think that what both Enel and Schneider are trying to do is they're trying to provide the many things that we do, by the way, because we're working for big groups and there are different focuses. But one important one is try to satisfy our customer need of understanding how they can be sustainable. We keep hearing about the sustainability concept, the decarbonization concept, and the circularity concept, all fantastic stuff. But then, so many companies out there come to us, like they come to you and say, okay, I heard you. I understand that I need to do something different. How do I do it? And I think that that's exactly where our two companies can play a very important role, because we understood what being sustainable, what decarbonization, what circularity mean, and we can provide solutions to our customers, helping them in driving through this transition. So I want to highlight the fact that not very many companies think in this way. They don't focus enough on the final objective, which is helping the customers in this journey through the energy transition.
Well, Francesco Venturini, CEO of Enel X, thank you very, very much for your time. It's always a great pleasure to see you. I hope we can have the opportunity to see each other face-to-face soon and share a dinner. It's been a while. I wish you all the best for this, the rest of this very, very successful year for Enel and for Enel X in particular. And thank you once again for what you do for the energy transition and for taking the time to chat with us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Innovation at the Edge by Schneider Electric. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you'll never miss an episode. If you like this episode, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. For more information on the Innovation at the Edge program at Schneider Electric, go to se.com/ventures or follow us on LinkedIn. The content of this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be undertaken as financial, economic, legal, business, tax, or investment advice. The information, statements, views, and opinions should not be construed as the provision of advice by Schneider Electric, or as an offer to buy or sell any products or services, or to make or consider an investment or course of action.